Electoral officials here in Nigeria have postponed Saturday's ballot for state governors and state assemblies by 1 week. The opposition had asked to check electronic voting machines, but the Independent National Electoral Commission said that the legal challenge had held up preparations. The delayed elections will see 28 seats decided, along with hundreds of seats for state assembly members. Well, for more on this, let's speak now to Arise's political editor and director of news, Sumner Sambo, who joins me here in the studio. Good to see you, Sumner. Just remind us of the reasons that INEC gave for postponing Saturday's election.
Thank you so much, Charles. Now, there was a court ruling from the Court of Appeal, which actually gave INEC the powers to be able to reconfigure the bimodal voter authentication system machines. It's called BVAS, which is the machines you talked about, the electronic machines for voting and all of that. Now, there had been a court case filed by the candidate of the Labour Party and that of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, in the same court, seeking the powers to stop INEC from tampering with the BVAS machines after the outcome of the February 25 elections, where Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress was announced winner. So they had said that if INEC tampers with it, that the data contained therein would have been lost and that it's an attempt at rigging. But the Court of Appeal, after listening to the application filed by especially the Labour Party, gave INEC the powers to be able to go ahead and reconfigure the machines for the governorship elections that were supposed to have held on March 11th, saying that INEC has a much more national responsibility to go ahead with the election in such a way that there's no chaos and all of that, saying that the elections for the governorship and houses of assembly should be allowed to go on, because INEC had told the court, especially through its affidavit, saying that the content, the data contained in the BVAS will not be lost because it will be stored in its database.
Right.
And the court said that when INEC filed the case, in its own explanation, its own affidavit filed before the court, INEC stated clearly that nothing would happen to the data on its database, and Labour Party and its candidate Peter Obi did not object to that. So if both parties didn't object to INEC's submission, then of course INEC can go ahead and transfer the data on the BVAS machines
and
into
INEC
its
assured
database.
them that they would do that. Right.
And so it's based on that premise that INEC was given the powers. But INEC said it needed about 5 days to reconfigure the machines, and the ruling came on Wednesday, and so it had just like 2-3 days before the election.
Right.
Now, the sensitive election materials could not be moved because of that fears. Maybe the court may not grant INEC the powers or not. So most of the sensitive election materials were still at CBN offices nationwide.
That's the central bank.
The Central Bank of Nigeria. So based on that, when they eventually got the ruling, there's no how they wouldn't have cancelled the election, because if they had gone ahead, there is a tendency that the elections may not have held as Nigerians would want it to.
So basically, it's once again about logistics and the inability of INEC to get on top of that.
Yes, basically about logistics, and then of course obtaining the court order. Because INEC had gone to court to actually ask the court to vary its previous order. Now, the court had previously asked the Labour Party and its candidate Peter Obi to go ahead and inspect the election materials, asking INEC not to tamper with any of them. But the court clarified itself by saying that what it said were normal election materials, not the database of INEC. Since INEC has said that all the information from the February 25 polls in the BVAS will be transferred to the database and nothing will happen to it, and it wasn't challenged by the Labour Party and its candidate, the Labour Party and its candidate should have assurance that nothing will happen. It also warned INEC not to tamper with the content that will be posted on the database. Yes, as long as there's that trust and that condition that nothing will happen to what has been stored on the database, then INEC can go ahead and reconfigure. And INEC now said that the timing of the judgment was too short for it to go ahead with the conduct of the election. So we now await the rescheduled election on March 18.
So how are Nigerians reacting to all of this?
Yeah, from what we've heard, we at Rise News here had to send out, crews to actually fill the tempo of Nigerians, and they actually welcome it, because that controversy alone had stalled the distribution of electoral materials across the country. A lot of people were apprehensive that the elections may hold or may not hold, and of course, the political parties especially are receiving it with, a very, very good acceptability, with warmth, because they were being careful not to also send out monies only for INEC to reschedule election maybe 24 hours before. So that this is coming at least 36 hours or 48 hours before the election. Sorry, 72 hours or 48 hours before the election. It makes it much more clearer and better in terms of their own logistics. So it's been well received, and people are hoping that by March 18, INEC would have no excuses not to provide an election that is well conducted and free, fair, and credible.
But overall, would people thinking that, it's an awful shame that INEC has once again failed to conduct elections as promised? I mean, both the presidential and the governorship ballots have all fallen short of expectations.
Yes, I mean, INEC's credibility is on the line at the moment. A lot of people, in fact, we as journalists are also afraid that there will be a lot of voter apathy, because it looks like the electoral system is being pushed to the world. We are not, that when you shift elections, there are lots of people who will be affected. People who have already planned their weddings, people who have already planned their movements, and suddenly you move into that date that they had already shifted previously because of, and then you are now tampering with that date. So a lot of things will be at stake, but right now INEC would have to do more to convince a lot of Nigerians that these elections will be conducted in such a manner that will make it credible. But as it stands right now, the credibility of the organization itself continues to be eroded by some of these challenges, and of course with the major challenge in courts. So it's left for INEC to actually reassure Nigerians and to see how they can be joined by the political parties to ensure that there is no voter apathy. But as it stands right now, I can tell you that a lot of people have lost faith in one way or the other with the electoral system, and it may affect turnout on March 18.
Sumner, thanks very much indeed. Sumner Sambo is Aride's politics editor and director of news.